Well, welcome everybody. So glad to have you here today for our April edition of the Oregon City Business Alliance Forums. A little different layout for you today. We have a few extra people that are planning to come, at least they're registered to go ahead and be here, so we wanted to make sure we had enough room for everyone. Again, our thank you to the Abernathy Center staff for preparing another amazing buffet for us. If you could give them a hand, I'm sure they would appreciate it. So today our topic is on the challenges that we're facing in the manufacturing industry. And where do we begin? I mean, really, what challenge doesn't the manufacturing industry face in today's environment? Whether I brought a newspaper article from Pamplin Media, or excuse me, the Portland Tribune. Oregon projects, I don't know if you're going to be able to see this, but Oregon projects plagued by major labor shortage. Well, that's just one of the issues that Oregon projects, including manufacturing, are facing today with the lack of skilled individuals that have the proper training to step into the future of manufacturing jobs. The industry is moving at such a fast pace, I believe due to the pandemic. Industries in that sector reevaluated themselves and looked at how can we become more efficient? How can our employees become more productive? In case we have another shutdown, hopefully never we do, but in case that happens, how can we try to get as much as we can out of our trained workforce? So it's a process. These things don't happen overnight, but we are moving in that direction. And today I'm sure our speakers will be touching on that. So with that being said, I'd like to go ahead and introduce our moderator, Joe. Come on up here. And if you remember, we have blue cards on the tables. For any of you that have any questions, we try to save those to the end of the panel presentation. So we have 4 panel speakers today, so we're very fortunate to have a well-prepared presentation with slides. And Joe will be the moderator, Joe Connors. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to him, and then I'll join all of you again towards the end for the Q&A session. So write down those questions. We'll pick them up. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Kent. Appreciate it. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Our organization is empowering Oregon manufacturing, and everyone involved today is active with manufacturers in the local community. So today's subject is, why can't I get what I want when I want it? And I've been trying to get a pair of running shoes for about 6 weeks now. And so I would call the store, and they'd say, we get a shipment every Tuesday. We just don't know what we're getting. So then they said, you might want to try online. I ordered online, and they accepted my order. The order's confirmed. They took my cash, but it hasn't shipped yet. So I had to call a week later. They said, yeah, well, we're checking on that. And then last week they said, it's going to ship on the 28th. So this Thursday, those sneakers are shipping. I don't know when they'll arrive. Maybe it'll be a week, 2 weeks, but I think all of us are facing that. And really what today is about, we've got 4 subject matter experts that are going to talk about different aspects of the supply chain. We're going to start off with Paul Menig. Paul is CEO of Business Accelerants. Paul's just going to kind of give us a level set, a status update on the current manufacturing environment. Kind of a forecast. Julie Marquis, president of Key Process Innovations, she's going to talk about workforce, because whether it's materials or people, they all coalesce to get us what we're trying to order. Frank McShane, president of Square Peg Consulting. Frank is going to cover supply chain issues and just an overall outlook. And then, of course, we're going to wind things down with Lori Oland, and Lori is in the trenches every day as president of Miles Fiberglass and Composites. I've seen Lori present before. She's just really got some wonderful insights. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Paul, our first panelist, Paul Menig.
Okay, thank you, Joe. I'll give you a warning. I talk fast, and I have a lot of material, but the good news is this is being recorded, and we can make a copy of the presentation available to you so that you can study it later and get anything that you might have missed. I'd like to begin with an overview of manufacturing in this Pacific Northwest area of the country, and then a little bit on the state. So this is another one of those busy slides I've talked about. This data is from a study that was done less than 1 year ago by Aldrich and Schwabe, Williamson, and Wyatt. 543 companies responded. Half are under $5 million, 30% between $5 million and $20 million. Now note the industries that they selected of their own accord. Food and beverage, aerospace, and electronics are near the top of the list. I'm personally surprised by the consumer products at 14%, but as I thought about that, it's probably Joe's Shoes and Columbia Sportswear and Nike and some of those other things. 76% of the respondents reported supply chain problems. How did they deal with it? They added inventory. They sought new suppliers. They raised prices. And then the biggest category was other things that they did to deal with the supply chain issues. I know of people that flew things from China. I know people that found things under people's desk in the distributor world in order to be able to keep things going. They reported supply chain as a primary issue, and yet 1 year ago they reported a positive outlook going forward and plans to expand. They also saw rising costs in general, and particularly for health insurance. Attracting and retaining skilled employees and/or employee morale was right up there along with attracting new customers. This slide and the one after it come from the National Association of Manufacturers. It's an organization that's been around since 1895, and now this is specific to Oregon. They report over $34 billion in output from over 5,000 companies employing 182,000 people, with a compensation averaging over $82,000. That's a number well above minimum wage and well above a living wage. Note the top areas for revenue are repeating again now with electronics, food, and beverage. But the top areas for growth to the right are a little more diverse, with electronics still leading the way. Food and beverage is still among the top 10, but it's split into several different categories. And the pharmaceutical, medical, and instrument categories were a bit surprising to me. But having worked in some of the startups around this area, that's an area that I know that a number of people are involved in. Note the items in the bottom left for export. Exports are a much bigger thing for us here in Oregon than even I anticipated. Now, this study is from the Oregon Business and Industry Association, and it was done by Eco Northwest. It was published in November of last year. The upper left gives some even larger numbers for the impact of manufacturing in our state, with 214,000 jobs and $33 billion in gross economic product. Looking at the chart in the upper right, those numbers would put Oregon in the top third of states. Not bad. Behind the Midwest, but surprisingly ahead of Texas, Washington, and California. In the lower right, there is a chart that shows the top areas for gross domestic product and employment. Again, electronics, food and beverage being among the top ones. The bottom left chart shows that we punch above our weight, with just 1.28% of the population in the United States, but 1.5% of the GDP. I really like this chart because it shows the immense growth in electronics jobs and the loss of wood products jobs over the last 50 years. You can see the high growth years of the likes of Intel and Tektronix, and then you can see the move to offshoring some of those jobs. In the upper right, it shows that Oregon has done better at retaining jobs than the rest of the United States. But as with any data, it's important to understand what is behind the numbers. In the bottom right there, this is data from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics showing a decline in manufacturing jobs in the U.S. since the mid-70s. I've talked with some economists about this, and there's a bit of a flaw in the way those numbers are gathered. They're gathered at the plant level. If someone is on your payroll to do accounting or janitorial work, they were likely counted as manufacturing 35 years ago. Today, those jobs are often outsourced, and they end up being considered service jobs now. So be careful when you look at the statistics of the decline of manufacturing in the US and understand exactly what they're telling us. Here's just a little bit of information from late last year from the National Federation of Independent Business. The end of last year was looking bright as sales were increasing, but the pressures we all had on costs in the supply chain were having a negative effect on earnings. Then came a new variant of COVID and the Russian military action in Ukraine. So now, everything has changed. Everything has changed again. Can't we get a respite from the challenges in business in general, in manufacturing in particular? There is a tremendous amount of good news in the trade net, not press, because I get it all online. Plants are being built. Industries like wind and solar are being fostered by government subsidies in the latest budget. Vehicles are moving to electric, and truck production is expected to increase this year and next. Take note of the lower right chart. March 2022 marked the highest ever production in the US of household appliances. I worked for GE back in the early 80s and lived near the Whirlpool factories in Michigan. I was astounded to believe that there's a piece of data suggesting this. So I'm going to investigate it further. In fact, in the Wall Street Journal, there was a note saying that Whirlpool's first quarter was down 8% from last year. But unfortunately, there is perhaps even more bad news on the net. Those manufacturing facilities and investments, they're not here in Oregon. Even our homegrown electronics industry with Intel investing in Arizona, Ohio, and Europe. Diesel fuel prices have risen from about $2.50 per gallon pre-COVID to over $5 now. Force majeure, I don't know if anybody has seen that in their contracts. It's one of those legal terms at the end of many supply contracts that the risk-averse lawyers demand to be there to protect you, the owners. That boilerplate text has blown a gasket, with many companies sending letters and more than half of them receiving such letters. Inflation in costs, material availability, and labor availability top the list of supplier concerns in the trucking industry that I get a survey from every month. The issue at the ports having constrained production and sales for many companies is well known. I was hearing about LA and Long Beach all the time, and I finally saw a report that covered all the other ports in the country as well. Every port has had issues. Just yesterday, it was reported that processing of containers at the ports of LA and Long Beach reached a new record in the first quarter, exceeding the record that was set in Q1 of 2021 by 2.5% to 3.5%. Some of the other ports had even larger increases, up to 14%, but some had lower output. Some of you have seen the cost of a container go from under $2,000 to over $10,000 in the last year. Here's part of the problem. While we saw that Oregon is a great resource for exports, there is an imbalance. The containers are manufactured overseas, they come here full of product, and then they have no place to go. I recently did a study with trucking fleets, and they are now scrapping the containers since they don't have any place to take them. There's a tiny bit of good news locally. on that front. One of our largest manufacturers here in the area, Greenbrier, has a Mexican subsidiary that's making the chassis underneath those containers that are driven out on the road. I think it was Julie, my fellow panelist here, we were talking about KPIs and key performance indicators. And she said, too often that's looking back. We need to redefine KPI to be, we need to search for key predictive indicators. So if you like economic data, here's one that a trucking industry economist has. It's purely financial based. Anything below that red line of 200 in this index has reliably predicted a recession over the last 30 years. Those gray bars up and down are the recessions as they are declared after the fact by the government. Things are not looking good at the moment, as you can see. There's a tremendous source called FRED, the St. Louis Federal Research Economic Data. Economists everywhere use their data, and it is really easy to look up just about anything you want. I've been involved in the trucking industry since the mid-1980s. Heavy-duty truck retail sales, not orders, not production, not inventory, because that's another discussion as to whether you're building inventory or just stocking your dealers. Heavy-duty truck sales have been a key predictive indicator for the economy. Note that there's a relative peak of sales prior to recessions over the last 50 years. Notice in particular that the data suggests we were headed for a recession before the COVID outbreak. That's what we saw in the trucking industry. One last item, so we can slide into Julie's area. This is from a first quarter poll of suppliers to the trucking industry. The country might say we're at full employment, but manufacturing companies are still struggling, from the plant floor to the salespeople and everywhere else in between. So thanks for listening. And Julie, tell us a little bit more about the people issues.
Good afternoon. I was expecting to be mic'd, so if I am not talking loud enough, let me know, okay? I'll do my best. But I had put a whole bunch of statistics together to share with you that says we have a really tight labor market, but I assume you guys already know that, right? So are you spending time thinking the same thing I'm thinking, which is, where did all the employees go? Yeah. Unfortunately, I don't have time to unpack that mystery for all of you today. But what I do want to do is spend the little bit of time that I have with you sharing ways for you to attract talent into your organizations. Does that seem like a good use of our time together today? Excellent. Okay, so over the past 2 years, I think we have all had time to think about what we want to do with our time and who we want to spend our time with. And that's especially true when it comes to work, because we spend most of our time, our awake hours at work. So let me ask a question. Why do you think people leave the jobs that they're currently at? Can you guys share what you think? Why do people leave the jobs that they're at? More money? Okay. Don't feel valued. Cherry? Other opportunities? Retirement. That's a good one. Surprisingly, the reason why people leave their work is not for money. There's other factors. So when we think about, we need to attract people to our organization. We want them to come work for us. We have openings. And what type of a message are we sending to our candidates on reasons why they would want to come work for us? So I'm going to give you a couple of examples that I found off kind of help wanted websites in the Portland area. The first one was a quality engineer. These are all Portland based, just so you know. Quality engineer, it lists what you will be doing, job complexity, and what we are looking for. And in return, the company is offering competitive pay and work-life balance. And when I read competitive pay, I think, oh, you're going to pay me the same thing that anyone else would pay me, right? So if you're going to lead with pay, make sure you're paying double or even triple what another company would pay somebody with the same level of experience. Here's another one. This is a warehouse manager, and I quote, "Under close supervision, ... Oh, so now you're going to micromanage me. That is why people leave their jobs. They don't want to be micromanaged. So here's another one. It was an office solutions company, and what they said was not just work, but meaningful work. People are at the core of what we do. They talk a little bit about the job, and then they say, here's what it would look like for you to work here. And they draw a picture of what it's like to be in this work environment. And when I read that, I said, that company really values their employees. So when you think about the ads and the communication that you're having with candidates, are you talking about what you want from them? Or are you creating a picture that would bring them towards you and your company? Because we are all in the job of selling, because we've got to sell these candidates on why they want to work for us. So one of the other reasons why people leave is they don't like the culture. And even if you don't know what your culture is, you still have a culture. And the culture is made up of kind of the work environment that you've created in your business. And when I'm working with my clients, I talk about these guiding principles or core values. What are those core values that we are using to drive behavior in our organization? So if, let's say, teamwork is one of your core values, what does that look like? Does that mean that you're going to put the company and the team above your personal ambitions? Or are you rewarding behaviors that it says it doesn't matter what the person does to the rest of the team as long as the company gets what they want? And I think that when we talk about that, I want to just give you a couple steps, a couple ideas on how you can use culture to drive people towards your organization. The first is, as a leadership team, get crystal clear on what are your core values. What are those guiding principles that you really want to see in your organization? And once you're clear on that, you've got to live and breathe those core values. That means you have to take them off the wall behind the receptionist, off your business cards, off your coffee mugs, and live and breathe those. Use them to hire and fire, recognize and reward your employees so you are driving those core values and driving that culture throughout the entire organization. And when you do that, what happens is you start to attract people who really want to be a part of that culture. They're excited about that. And you are going to repel those people that don't want anything to do with those core values. And I believe you are served either way. And I want to just finish this with a couple of just case studies to give you examples of what people are doing in this market to be able to attract great talent. The first one is it desktop too? All right. The first one is General Sheet Metal. All right. There we go. So about 9 months ago, they came to me and they were lamenting about how they couldn't find any great people. And they were really struggling as an organization. So we spent some time talking about what are those core values that are really important to you. And they had already identified them, but as a leadership team, they agreed that those were the right core values. So we talked about what can you do to drive those into the rest of the organization. And they really started to recognize people and reward them when they were demonstrating the core values. They did an employee engagement survey, and they actually listened to the employees and took some action on the feedback they were getting. I saw them 2 weeks ago. They said, Julie, we are so excited. We've turned the corner, and we are going in the right direction. We're poised for growth. We're set up for a great year this year. The other example I want to share is from Enoch Precision Machining. Eric was supposed to be here today, but he's not. But I want to share this video that he put together with his employees that he uses to attract people to his organization. All right, got it?
We wanted to see a new group of people come in, so we set up our training program to be able to share the knowledge of the people on the floor. Some have been doing this for over 40 years, they've got a ton of knowledge. So we felt the best way to do that would be to have an in-house training program where people either straight out of school or people that have been in the industry a long time, anybody can really come to Enoch and be trained the way that we do it, and we try to boost people as fast as possible without really trying to overwhelm them. But we want people to get the skills necessary to be the best they can as fast as they can. Jocelyn's a great example. She's been here for 9 months now, and she's already setting up multiple machines.
Before Enoch, I was in a community college program that kind of caters you to get into this industry. It's a quicker program, it's 3 months. So I had a basic understanding of how machining works, but I actually never touched the machine that I was on. When I got to Enoch, I felt like I was set up for success.
Many of the machine shops out there, I've been to a couple, they don't really have an integrated training program. You go sit at a machine and that's what you do. You have to take the initiative to learn anything, and sometimes even then, you don't learn very much. Like I said, we want to boost that as quickly as possible. We want to get you to learn everything that you possibly can. We want you to be an integral part of this shop.
So the training program here at Enoch, I think, is really, really good. I'm almost done with school now, so it's a lot of stuff we've covered in school. And if someone was to come here really with no manufacturing experience or doesn't know anything about a CNC machine, for instance, it's going to help them along the way a lot. And it's also been great for sort of helping me understand how to apply some of the stuff I learned directly to the job.
So if you've been on the job for 10 years, you've had on-the-job training, or you've had college training, or you've only taken one class, we try to get everybody on the same page so that everybody has the same knowledge and everybody can succeed at the same level. I'm excited to be a part of this program because it gives us the opportunity to teach a new generation of machinists with people that have been in the industry for over 40 years. I would like to see a new generation of machinists, and I would like them to become the best they can be as fast as they possibly can.
So I just want you to know that taking those steps that you need to take in order to be able to win this labor shortage challenge, it's not hard. It's hard. It's simple, but it's not easy. But if you're willing to take the time and make the commitment to doing that, you are going to be poised for growth and be ready to be at the forefront of beating this labor shortage. Thank you.
There we go. Okay. All right. Now you're really going to hear me. So anyway, I joined the company. We went through a sale process. I decided I didn't want to work for anybody else, so I went back into consulting. But what I love is supply chain work, and so that's what we're here to talk about today. So I'm going to quickly cover 4 topics. What do we mean by supply chain? I want to make sure we're all on the same page about what that really means. We want to know what happened to the supply chain over the past couple of years, and why is it we can't get what we want when we want it? What's going on out there? And what's the outlook for the next few years? So it's not going to just suddenly turn around and change and everything's going to be rosy. So that leads us to the last one, which is what can you do to help your own situation? So I've got some suggestions for you on that. When we talk about the supply chain, Most people focus on the internal parts, planning and buying and order process, making, moving things, working with their people and teams. But the supply chain actually includes your customers and your suppliers, but even more, it contains their customers and their suppliers. And to really understand what's going on in the supply chain and what to expect, you've got to really know what's going on with my suppliers' suppliers and what demand is going to be coming from my customers' customers, because that's what's triggering all the actions that you're going to need to take. And so that's a little bit of hard work. It takes some data to help you figure that out, and we'll talk about that in a minute. If we talk about what happened over the past few years, there were some pre-existing conditions. There was a driver shortage. That was building up in the early aughts and into the teens of this century, certainly. People were retiring, people weren't going into the industry. I know you're probably familiar with that, Paul, in your trucking experience, but it's very hard to recruit young people into the trucking business. And so there was a shortage there. Also, there was a container shortage. Even before the pandemic, there was a bit of a container shortage. So then the pandemic showed up, and demand fell off precipitously, right? When everybody went into lockdowns, particularly overseas, much stricter lockdowns, regulations than what we saw here, even so. The suppliers reacted to that drop, like they normally would. They shut down internationally, went into strict lockdowns. Here we cut back dramatically on capacity, right? And then also during that time, the Great Resignation began. So people started to reevaluate their lives, as Julie was talking about, and Paul, and taking a look at what they're really wanting to do, not finding a clear path for themselves, not finding a clear purpose, and leaving to go either do something else, or in some cases, do nothing for a while, right? And then they're not returning. There's a lot of people who've decided not to return to the traditional workforce, and so we got a smaller pool to pick from coming forward. Now the pandemic has been easing, hopefully, and demand grew again precipitously. It doesn't seem to go in smooth, gradual, it's like this, up and down, and it grew very precipitously. And yet those ongoing conditions were still there, so we still have a driver shortage. It's showing up in particular at the ports, where we don't have enough drivers to bring things to the port and particularly to take things back from the port. And so there's a bottleneck there. And there's still a container shortage going on. So if you look at this, is about ocean shipping capacity change, which has mostly to do with containers. And you can see the pattern up to 2020. This is the growth in demand and the growth in the supply of container capacity. Doesn't mean they're in balance, it just means the growth pattern. So demand started to drop into 2019, particularly in Asia, as the pandemic started to spread there first. In 2020, as you can see, it actually went negative. And the supply growth of containers also started to come back down. Well, then in 2021, things got better from a pandemic point of view. Demand went through the roof, 7.4% drop. And the container capacity wasn't anywhere near growing at that rate. And so we're behind now. And we're going to be behind this year again, and don't expect to really catch up in terms of growth rate until next year. Right? So the container shortage is going to continue for a period of time. So that's going to lead us to some choices about what to do and where to source products from. Here's a picture from 2021 of average container days in port. And it ranges from a little over 60 in New York down to 30, just under 30 in Boston. Right, so a long time sitting in port. So containers, as Paul was mentioning, the containers come in, they sit on the ships waiting for the few truck drivers that we have to unload them, and then they sit in the port waiting on a ship to go back out again. And so they end up staying in place for quite a while. So what to do about all this? How can you help yourself? So this is the hard news part, but looking at your customers, I recommend, sorry for the shadow there, I recommend you analyze your customer base by cash contribution and figure out who's contributing 80% of my cash contribution. And those are the ones you really want to focus on. Then you're going to find there's a group in the 20% of cash contribution. It's going to be a large group of customers that don't really contribute much to the business. So then you got to start to segment your service levels, your lead times. What are you willing to pay to service these customers? Because the few customers, the 20% of the customers generating 80% of your cash contribution, they need and deserve the most service and attention. Right? Those are the first-class passengers. The next group, there's the next 15%, part of that 20% that's only generating 15% of the cash contribution. They're like premium economy, right? So they may get a little bit of extra service, but not a lot. And then you've got a long tail of customers that are in basic economy, right? And they get what you sell them at the price you agreed to when you say you're going to get it. And that's about it. You know, expediting, paying extra freight for customers that are generating only 5% of your cash contribution doesn't make any sense. So unfortunately, the message here, it could be less is more in terms of customers, right? You've got to pick and choose who are we going to go to battle with in this particular situation. I went through that personally with Longview Fiber. When I took over, we were a $700 million paper company losing $70 million in EBITDA every year. We converted it into a $500 million company making $70 million a year. Right? And it was by picking and choosing which customers, which products, which lines of business really make sense for us and which ones don't. And the past philosophy had been more is good, more is more volume, more products, more customers. And yet that was pulling the company down. So that's the first thing, is to be selective about who you do business with. Taking a look at order quantities and lead times. So for those lower level tail basic economy customers, set some minimum order quantities. Don't just take little customers, little frequent orders, which drives up your cost. It gets in the way of the other customers' orders. Extend your lead times, et cetera. Set some minimums and stick with those. If they opt to drop you as a supplier, okay. Right. They're only 5% of the cash contribution, so they're not going to have a big impact to you. You need to consider some inventory. So we've been living in the just-in-time world for 20, 30 years now, right? And that works fine when everything is on time, right? But it's not. And so it's time to really think about, where do I invest some inventory with these high-value customers? I need to make sure that I've got some cushion for the unexpected to service those customers. And lastly, make sure you meet your commitments to your customers. So you need to be known, as we're competing for business and competing to who can execute on their supply chain the best. You've got to be able to deliver on those promises. So be careful what you promise, because that's what they're going to expect. If we look at suppliers, next, also be a great customer. Pay on time to your suppliers. Don't start extending their payments out, because they're going to be choosing who do they put in the priority line to serve their business, right? So you want to be at the front of the line. Make sure you're turning around shipments, particularly your trucking suppliers. You're turning around shipments as fast as possible. I've been out in a number of shipping docks watching what goes on there, and it's amazing how much stuff, when the truck pulls up to the dock, how many things happen that could have been done before the truck ever got there. And then all we had to do was actually load the order and let the truck go. But it's like starting from scratch, and it extends the time at the dock, and that's what they hate. They're trying to turn that asset around and get a return on that asset. And so the faster you can turn them around, the better you're going to look to the trucking suppliers. You know, be conservative with your lead times. Don't try and promise something you can't deliver. And with your suppliers, give them as much advance warning as you can. And again, for the suppliers, you can do that same 80-20 analysis. And for those 80% suppliers that you really your strategic partners, you need to be doing very detailed collaborative planning with those guys, right? So that they're like part of the team. as opposed to just a supplier. They need to feel like they're in on it. They know what your plans are. They know what your customers are going to be doing, so we can all plan for those events coming at us. Again, consider some inventory strategically for suppliers, particularly if it's an overseas supply that you're going to have to deal with. So you're reducing your risk. It's going to require a little bit of cash investment, a lot cheaper than expediting containers across the ocean. Much cheaper than that. And then take a look at your supply base. You want to consolidate where you have a lot of suppliers in a certain commodity. Take a look at reducing that number and get down to more of a strategic partnership with a few of them that you can really depend on and treat them. And your leverage, by the way, goes up with those suppliers. And in case you got one supplier for a key commodity, you might want to think about having a backup supplier. You know, so you're not, all your eggs are not in one basket and you're not over leveraged with that supplier. Lastly, and this overlaps a little bit with what Julie was dealing with your employees. So there's a new trend called stay interviews instead of exit interviews, right? We're trying to prevent exit interviews. We want to have a stay interview. So sit down and talk to them. How's it going? What do you think about the company so far? Particularly the new people, you know, they're fresh in, they have a fresh view, and they need to know that you're interested in how they're perceiving things. All your key employees, you should do a stay interview with them and talk about what they have in mind for their career. What's next? So we do some career planning to them. And we need to really listen and respond to their concerns, which doesn't mean agree with their concerns. It means you listen and you make sure they understand that you heard them. You may have to say no to that, but you can actually explain why you're saying no. That's the issue, is to get back to them with a good rationale. And they know, okay, you heard me, you got back to me, it's a no. They can live with that, as opposed to never hearing back and nothing ever gets said about their concern. And then the next one is focusing on why. Julie mentioned that people want to have meaningful work. A big part of that is being part of a company that knows why they're in existence. And why is going to be an emotion.
Okay, well, hey, thank you for having me and good afternoon. I hope you can hear me. This is okay? Okay, good. I feel like I'm in my old stomping grounds here. We've been Miles Fiberglass over there for about 40 years until we moved during the pandemic. So who would have ever thought we would move during the pandemic, but we did. And that's a story in itself. And then the wildfire hit where we were moving to. So that was interesting too. First, I'll do a little history. My father started a business in 1963, the year I was born, and I was the last of 3 daughters. Of course, he didn't have very much money, because when you start a business, it's very difficult. So he, in order to pay for me and the doctors, he traded me for 2 canoes. And that kind of sets the theme for our business, because we are very creative and very innovative. And so he pretty much set the stage for that. We moved into one facility, 80,000 square feet off of Jennifer. And it was really awesome at first, just to be in one building and not have to go back and forth. So that was really it was a goal that we had had for a very long time. So we were very happy about that. We started providing wind blade repair service teams back in 2007. So we continued to do that for Siemens and Vestas. We do open molding, hand layup, RTM, close molding, and press molding. Well, in 2020, the unexpected happened, and everybody went through it. But when it first happened, we had just signed the contract with Vestas to send our wind techs across the country. And then that happened, and we were like, well, now how do they fly from place to place? There's no hotels, there's no place for them to eat. So that sent us into a whirlwind for a little bit. We closed for a few months because we weren't sure what was happening. I'm sure everybody went through the same thing. And I look at it like we were playing that game, Mother May I? You know, you put your hand up, everyone stop. Then, okay, then you run, you put your hand up. That's how it seemed for us. We would start one thing, oh, no, that's not how you do it. You have to do it this way. So it was very confusing in the beginning. And we, after 3 months, we had we got the PPP loan, and our employees came back and we started making face shields until we got pretty busy. We got 3 major contracts in 5 months, which really surprised us. We got a big contract with SpaceX, Blair Space, and Heartland RV, which it exploded. That business just exploded. And I think I know where all those employees were. They're in vans and trailers around the country because everybody was buying trailers and vans like crazy. So it was good for us. And we really got really busy. So that was good. Then for last year, we doubled our sales. So that was a surprise too. We went from 8.7 to 17 million in 1 year. And it just was crazy during the pandemic to do that, but we were really happy about that. We doubled our personnel in the wind, and we still couldn't find enough people. We raised our starting rate by $3 in 1 year. We had signing bonuses, we had referral bonuses. We were trying the clean and sober houses. We were trying the correctional facilities, anything we could think of. We noticed that the high schools were in session. So we called a friend of ours that was a teacher at the Saving Skills Center. He came to work for us, and then he brought a bunch of kids to come to work because they were bored at home. And they loved it. They were just thrilled to be doing something outside the house. So that was really good for a while. We found a friendly competitor that was struggling from the pandemic, and we were able to sub out some of our more expertise people to them, and then continue with the new employees and our training program. So that was something that we tried, and it worked out pretty good. And we made it through the pandemic problems, but now we have new problems, of course. We have delivery delay.
And which are very challenging. We must pre-order everything, way ahead from what we were used to. So we have to pre-plan everything, and by the time we do a bid and it's accepted, the materials had gone up. So then we had to implement, just the bid's only good for 1 or 2 months. So we just had to make changes and pre-plan everything. We learned to be upfront with our customers and let them know, that our delay is like 4 months out, so then they could reschedule how they order from us. So everybody's just kind of learning as they go along. People are accepting and patient, and just everyone's learning how to deal with the situation. Shipping costs are so expensive, they're really high, so we had to raise our delivery rates by like 3 times in 1 year. But again, that was kind of ordinary. Everybody was kind of expecting it. We're trying to be flexible. I know with some of our competitors and even our friendly competitors, we're always asking each other, are you delivering something up this way? Can you take this for us? So we're just trying to collaborate a little bit on delivery, and that's been really helpful too. Being flexible helped us. We're trying new materials because sometimes you can't always get the materials that you need, so we're trying to be open and trying new materials. Let's see. I noticed our friendly competitors are now actually calling each other to see if they have extra employees that we can share. So we're kind of, we're renting out our employees as well, and that's another, something that everybody's trying to cope with. We also came talking about supply chain and ordering. In our industry, it's also the necessary to have been with a vendor for a very long time. If you were with a vendor, then they continue to sell to you. If you hadn't been buying from them, you were kind of put to the bottom of the barrel and you couldn't get it. So we had one major customer that could absolutely not get foam, and they were way bigger than we are, but we were supplying them with part of the product. So we went to them and said, we can buy your foam because we have that relationship with our vendor. So we bought the foam and then resold it to them, and they were very happy. We made a little bit of money on it, and it worked for everybody. So just trying to think outside the box and help everybody out as much as possible. In any one day, we have 9 people out for the day. Just, it's really hard to get people to come to work. That's been a real problem for us. We've tried many things, and some of the stuff we're trying is helping, but bonuses for not missing days, hiring extra people. We're doing lunches, we're paying for their paid lunches, ping pong tournaments, you know, we're just trying everything we can to get them to feel like part of the team. We were actually only shut down for 3 to 4 months, so we didn't really experience that much of lost productivity. It was more the absenteeism and lack of personnel. Scheduling deliveries is way out, as I said before, so pre-scheduling with trucking companies and trying new trucking companies has been helpful too. Keeping communications open with the customers for their changes, and partnering with people in our area just to help out in any way we can. I would say lessons learned are, you know, look for the opportunities. We tried to think of different things that we could do that were opportunities that we could cash in on, and trying to hire different people than we had normally hired, you know, like the clean and sober houses and the correctional institutes. They've been really good. That was a good thing that came out of this, is they are actually a really good workforce. So we're really pleased with that. Let's see, we're also, when our wind techs are down, they used to go back for R&R. We're bringing them back into the plant to continue to work there. And they like that because then they don't have a long period off. And they're also learning more about the composite industry and different functions. So that's been another good thing to help us fill in the gaps. And, you know, being a leader is really tough during this time. Like was said, you really do have to stay positive. Everybody's watching you. They're seeing how you're reacting. They're seeing if you're freaking out, and you know, just have to act like, oh, everything's fine. We're going to be fine. We stay positive. We have weekly meetings at the clock just to let them know what business is coming in, what's happening. And so that's been a really good thing too. And just chop wood, carry water, and this too shall pass, we hope. So that's it. Thank you.
You have something you'd like to say?
Oh, no, I didn't know if we were going to pivot to Q&A.
Yep, we are. Well, thank you, Lori. Thank you very much. Thank all of you, Joe and Julie and Frank and Paul, for your presentations today. Each one of you had a different expertise, a different insights that you're able to share. And so one of the question cards that we have from one of our attendees actually identified the particular speaker that they're going to direct their question to. So again, I thank each and every one of you today. We do encourage each of you that are attending to go ahead and submit questions that might be on your mind. Obviously, the manufacturing sector is really key in Clackamas County. We probably have so many small businesses that you've never even heard of that provide parts and materials in the assembly line approach to putting together the finished product. And I think Clackamas County really has a tremendous advantage having Clackamas Community College, Tim, in our own backyard here in Oregon City to go ahead and allow various individuals to get training on some of the most sophisticated state-of-the-art equipment that's available in today's manufacturing industry. So we're very thankful for that. So we're going to start the Q&A. Whoops, we're not going to start the Q&A. We're going to do something else.
Excuse me. As our host, we wanted to give a couple minutes to our sponsor, Clackamas Community College.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, Sonia, glad to see that you were able to join us today. Sonia Fisher, Commissioner with the Clackamas County Board of Commissioners. And she's up for re-election this year, so if you'd like to go ahead and write a check to her today before you leave, I'm sure she would be more than happy to accept it. Lock the doors, everybody. All right, well, let's start out with some of these questions. With the complete shutdown, and I'm just going to throw these out to the entire group, and then, well, we're going to do that at the end. Okay? Hey, who's the president here, William? Oh, that's true. William's the CEO, chairman of the board. I'm just the president, so we got to get that straight. So I'm going to throw this out to the group, and then we've got a mic here if one of you wants to come up and respond, or multiple people respond. With a complete shut, in fact, if all of you just want to come up, that'd be great. That way you're already here for the camera. With a complete shutdown of many of China's factories recently due to the COVID-19 pandemic, do you believe it will negatively impact the supply chain issues manufacturers in our local region are facing today? If so, by how much? And when do you feel that we'll receive or be dealing with the full impact of that?
Well, I know in the automotive industry, the shutdowns have already had an impact. If you read the news, even for Apple, it's had an impact as the factories have had to shut down. I think I saw something that said China's GDP was going to be constrained by about 4 percentage points as a result of this. But we haven't even talked about Ukraine and the fact that there's a lot of nickel that's needed for steel. There's nickel and other things that's needed for electric vehicles. So it's have the shutdowns and the conflict in Ukraine are having its problems for all of us.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're going to feel this for a little while. Hopefully some manufacturing in the U.S. will open up and kind of see the opportunity to take over some of those things. We can hope for that.
I mean, I think the short answer is yes. That you know, if with the severity of lockdowns that they impose in their in the countries in Southwest Asia and in China, it's going to have an impact. So you got to be planning further out, looking further out for alternative suppliers. It may ease a little bit of the container shortage a little bit. If there's less exports coming in, we may have a little bit more container opportunities, but you got to have something to put in them, and that's really going to be the shortage coming up.
Okay, great, thank you. I'll throw this out to the group. Since labor shortages are such a major issue in today's tight labor situation, are manufacturing industries turning to automation or artificial intelligence as part of the solution?
There's a lot of investment in cobots, robots that don't work entirely alone. Maybe the robot passes something to you, or you'd pass something to the robot. Automation changes the skill levels of what you need in the facility, though. So whereas you might need unskilled labor previously, you may need skilled labor now as you try to maintain the software and the hardware and the parts that are needed for that.
Yeah, that's a lot of training, and it works good for manufacturing that does the same thing over and over. In our case, we're always doing something different. It's a different product or a different part so much during the day that it's hard for us to get automated.
Yeah, particularly in the distribution warehousing world, there's a huge amount of automation coming in and replacing of people who just picking up and moving things. But those people, as somebody was saying, really, they have to now raise their skill level because all that automation requires maintenance and technology expertise in order to keep it running well. So, yeah.
Paul would like it.
Paul.
Just look what it took us to get this presentation working and how many people it took.
Just speak loud.
Yeah, much easier.
Okay, this one's for you, Lori. Can you just talk a little bit further about employee sharing? What that means, the challenges, the pluses, the minuses of that program?
So we had a lot of experienced employees. A lot of our employees have been with us for a very long time, so they had the technical skill set that we could send them out to work for somebody else, and then we brought in untrained people. We have our own in-house training program, so we could quickly put them through the training program and get their skills set up. So we have done that on 3 different occasions now with 3 different, they were competitive of ours, but friendly competitors, and they appreciate it, and it's been good for us too.
Well, probably goes both ways. When you need help from them, they're available to reciprocate. All right, Julie, how important are vision and mission statements to employee recruitment and retention?
I'd say that they're very important, and I when I'm working with my clients, I really want to get clear on kind of what your core values are, and then what's your core focus, and where are you going as an organization, because we want to create a vision for where the organization is going to be, kind of something where everyone can rally around it and they want to be a part of it. So when you talk about, oh, we want to be a $20 million company, that doesn't resonate with the employees. They really want to know what it looks like and how it's going to impact their lives and the lives around them.
All right, I want you to keep the microphone. I've got a follow-up question for you, and this is from an individual that works in the government. Hiring great employees has been one of the most important things I can do, but in this market, it's moving so fast to be able to evaluate a new employee. What do you recommend we do to be able to actually get through that process of vetting people?
Yeah, it's definitely what it used to take. Well, it's funny that somebody from the government asked this question, but I think we all can apply this. Some people will say, oh, we do a screen interview and then wait a week and then we have somebody come in and then we have them do this. Now, companies are actually pivoting within a day. They'll bring them in, they'll do all those interviews, bam, 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 and they know they have to make a decision by the end of the day or that person's gone. Because the chances, even if they accept the offer, they could go somewhere else as well. So you've got to modify that hiring process and get better at making quicker decisions.
One of the things, if you're in government, supporting employment opportunities, you mentioned high school kids. Getting high school kids to experience a manufacturing operation, getting to where you are working with the local community colleges to do work-study programs where they can get people coming in. And there's a trend now where you don't have to even have a college degree in order to have the ability to learn and take on the skills that you want. So get people working will be the biggest way. One of the companies I've worked with, they would hire as a contractor for 6 months. Then they would decide whether to hire or not. Yes, there's a fee associated with that, but you get an extended period of time to find out if that person fits, not just one day of interviews.
Yeah, we have a program where we bring in the Boy Scouts and they earn their composite merit badge and they make composite walking sticks, and they're 12 years old. So we've done, 250 of them. Well, during the pandemic, this kid comes in and he's like, I finally made it. And I'm like, what? And he goes, I made my composite walking stick here, like when I was 12 years old, and I've been waiting to be old enough to come back and work. So it does work. Yeah, it does work.
So on your question about vision and mission, I would also agree it's really important, but only if you actually live up to it. Because if you don't, it actually works against you, that you say one thing and do another. And by the way, most of it's nonverbal. It's what people observe and see you doing that matches that vision or that mission, as opposed to what you say. It's not nearly as important. Thanks.
Okay, great. With the potential for a late 2022 or early 2023 economic slowdown, or the big R word, being included in many forecasts, are there preemptive moves that local manufacturers can make in their labor force and supply chains?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, I think it's a perfect time to really examine who do you choose to do business with, right? Both on the customer side and on the supplier side. and really look for that higher value exchange between the two companies, because that's what you want to have in place going into any kind of a drop in business. So that's an ideal time. And the same with your employees. It's time to really take an objective, honest look at who performs, who has capabilities, who can be with you a longer term, and there's a plan for them, as opposed to the folks who are, you know, not the stellar performers. And it'll be time to make some tough decisions about them.
So we've got so busy that we have subcontracted out our work to another fiberglass shop, but we've maintained the relationship with the customer so that if times do get slow, we can bring them back and still maintain that business just in case.
And you don't all have to respond.
I don't have one right now.
Okay, this is one from one of our very intelligent board members, and it's directed at probably Frank and Paul predominantly. I was stunned recently when two very successful business leaders said they felt the Chinese system of asset allocation was superior to capitalism. What am I missing? What could possibly go wrong?
Were you listening or watching Elon Musk's tweets or what? Capitalism is good, in my opinion. A structured economy works well at certain times, but I mean, what I've been seeing in the different countries that have dictatorships or tyranny and stuff, I wouldn't want to be part of that. I'd rather be with what we're at.
I'm not an expert on the Chinese economy, but for capitalism, I mean, I think it's survived and gotten us, you know, where we are, which is not always everything's great either. I do think the wealth gap is a concern going forward, that it's gotten to almost too extreme. And so there's got to be a way to start sharing more of the benefits of our success further within our groups. But otherwise, I think it's, you know, it's still working pretty well.
Right.
Yeah, go ahead.
So there's a term that another consultant I know, conscious capitalism. And our state is very big on B Corps and diversity, equity, and inclusion and things. So there's a way that you can do capitalism that is not just making the wealthier wealthier and stuff.
Well, I think it also goes back to the comments that were being made. What defines a satisfied employee? And it's a totally holistic approach. It's just not the pay. It's actually feeling value and feeling purpose and feeling that they're contributing to society in a way that they feel very positive about. And capitalism encourages people to go out there and be truly entrepreneurial, not only in their risk-taking, but just in their creative thinking. And I can't imagine living in an environment where that's suppressed. That wouldn't give you very much hope each day.
How do you feel about that, Ken?
Well, let me tell you. Get over here in front of the camera. No, I'll stay over here on the side. Okay, the chip shortage has created huge backlogs for new cars and many other products such as kitchen appliances. Is there a quick solution to this problem, or are consumers just going to have to wait until the factories can increase their production?
There's going to be some waiting involved, because even to build a new fab plant is going to take 3 years before it comes online. So you're going to have to deal with whether or not you buy shoes that are purely rubber or shoes that have a chip in it that will allow you to detect the pressure in your feet. He's waiting on shoes. I'm waiting on a car. Even a quote-unquote dumb trailer behind a Class 8 truck, it has electronics in the ABS, the anti-lock brake system, and that's causing some problems. But it's, as we said, it's not just chips. The chips are slowly evolving because people have started. The shutdowns in China have been a problem for us. We almost had things starting up again, and then they slowed down because of the shutdowns for COVID. And I don't see an end to that right now. So the companies in the trucking sphere, they're still projecting it's going to be all of this year and into next before we're out of the chip problem.
Yeah,
That affects Lori because her trucks that she does things for all require chips.
Yeah.
All those electric wind energy farms need chips.
yeah, it's amazing how many products actually depend on chips that we never even thought about before this situation came about. It seems like we're going into a perfect storm. We have rising interest rates, rapidly rising interest rates, 40-year high inflation, tight labor market, wages being increased, which is the chicken and the egg scenario. So what can you do to try to maintain some level of profitability in your industry?
I like Frank's answers. One, get close to your customers and your suppliers and make sure that you're going after the ones that make money for you.
So one of the things I like to talk about with my clients is that you've got the leadership team, but you've got all the employees. And imagine you got a tug of war with your leadership team on one side and all your employees on the other. And who's going to win that tug of war? Anyone? The employees. So if you want to rally around some really difficult time, you've got to get those employees. There's more boots on the ground. So create a compelling vision for them and give them a reason to come and want to help your company win, because it's going to position you to be more creative, more flexible, more nimble to overcome some of those challenges. You missed my great analogy. It was great.
Hey, believe me, I can multitask. All right, so we're going to kind of wrap this up. This will be the last question. The Clackamas Workforce Partnership is working with a number of organizations on a quality jobs initiative. What do each of you think are the top 2 to 3 characteristics of a high-quality job?
I would say meaningful work and inclusion.
Yeah, I think a clear set of expectations, so people can see the results of what they're doing, and those results should be meaningful in some form or fashion. But a lot of times we're out there and we're not really sure how things are going. I asked the guy on a paper machine yesterday, how are we doing from a cull perspective, which is off-quality paper? Doesn't know. He kind of guessed at it, but those numbers should be right in front of somebody.
One of the things that a lot of people I talk with, like Lori, just having the common decency and training to be respectful when you come into work, to show up on time, to dress properly. When I talk with a lot of people that are in manufacturing or people with military, I always admire what the military teaches a person. In 12 weeks' time in boot camp, they can take somebody who is failing in school, rebellious, and turn them into a person, yes, sir, I will do it. That's amazing to me. And if we have more, you mentioned Boy Scouts. Boy Scouts teaches the same sort of thing. Girl Scouts teaches the same things.
And I would just say, make sure that people know what it means to be successful in their position. Like, let them know what success looks like and then give them something to strive towards.
All right, great. Well, thank you. Thank you, each of you. I'll let you have a seat. Thank you. So at this time, I'd like to thank our sponsor for today's Oregon City Business Alliance Forum. It's Clackamas Community College. They've been a real strong partner with our group. We've really enjoyed and appreciated the relationship we have with the college. Recently, we had our annual retreat up at the college, and Tim gave us a tour of several of the buildings that had just opened up, and you really get a true appreciation as to all the different opportunities you're providing to the students when you get a chance to actually look at the facilities up close and find out what all the different programs are that the college is offering. But I want to invite Tim up to kind of say a few words, kind of where we've been, where we're at, where we're going. Especially on this topic, because the college really is such a key fundamental part of that whole solution that we're experiencing.
Well, thank you, Kent, and thank you, presenters. That was a really educational process for all of us. I know I was taking notes. Dean Cynthia Risen here, who supervises all of our current technical programs, was taking notes, and our Associate Dean Shelley in the back, I'm sure, probably was too, because our tagline is education that works, and we really pride ourselves on providing innovative and responsive education. So as we're hearing where manufacturing is going and what we need to be doing to prepare our graduates for that, that's why we attend, and that's why we were happy to sponsor this program today. I tell you, for us, the biggest challenge is finding students to come into the program. We talk about the Great Resignation, and I was waiting for the answer, like, where do all these people go? We're asking the same question, where are they? Because they're not coming back yet either to step in and get trained. When they do, when they come and see the great stuff, and the opportunities and the business or the buildings and everything we have, they're excited, and it's a little easier to get them in there. But working with our high schools, working with our partners to get people in so that we can get them out into the workforce is really probably the challenge that we're having. There's still this sort of idea that people have to have a 4-year degree in our culture, and that's something that we all know, I think, inherently is really not true, but we need to be clear about the really strong opportunities and the great paying jobs in career and technical education. Manufacturing is a great example for us. We've retooled our programs. We can train up really in just a matter of months now, some skill sets for students to get out and get to work. We're shifting to short-term training. We're looking at credit, non-credit, because we know a lot of businesses don't really care whether it's credit anymore. So where we can help you, that's what we want to be here for and what we want to know about. But we're just thrilled to be here today and appreciate all the work that OCBA does. And again, thank you all for the great information today. Lori was over here, so thanks, Lori. Yeah.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you. Well, that's going to kind of wrap things up for today, but to kind of give you a little tease for next month, we're going to have a panel presentation, and one of the speakers is here with us today, Daniel over here. We're going to be talking about the strategies that Oregon City and Clackamas County and our local region can implement to attract tourism back to our area. I just flew back on a plane Sunday from the East Coast, and I didn't have to wear a mask. Boy, did that feel good. I can't tell you how good that felt. But we're going into the nicer weather. We've got a river out here that people love to use for all kinds of different recreational activities. So what can the Oregon City community, Downtown Association, Chamber of Commerce, and everyone else involved, and the county do to attract people back to our area so that we can get our piece of the pie? So hopefully all of you will be able to come back for May and be able to hear that panel presentation as well. On behalf of the Oregon City Business Alliance, I want to thank each and every one of you for coming today. We truly appreciate your support. If you haven't renewed your membership yet, be sure and do it, because those annual payments, dues, is what allows us to go ahead and put on these events here at the Abernathy Center. We're very fortunate to be able to have access to this amazing facility. So go out and enjoy the day. It doesn't look like it's raining. It's not hailing. So I think we're going to be okay. So again, thank you all for coming. See you in May.